a moment of unparalleled significance and devotion, witnessed by millions across the globe. As the world holds its breath, the white smoke rises from the Sistine Chapel, signaling the election of a new pope. The bells of St. Peter's Basilica toll, announcing the arrival of a new shepherd for the Catholic Church. But what sacred items does the newly elected pope receive before stepping onto the balcony to greet the world? Today, we dive deep into these powerful symbols, each carrying centuries of spiritual and historical meaning. The moment a new pope is elected, an extraordinary series of events begins to unfold. While the world awaits the first glimpse of the new leader from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, several sacred items are presented to him in private. These items carry profound spiritual significance, each representing a unique aspect of his mission as the leader of the global Catholic Church. From the white cassock to the papal ring, these items are not just ceremonial, they are deeply symbolic, steeped in history, and serve as constant reminders of the Pope's sacred responsibility to serve God and his people. Number 1. The white papal cassock, or san. The white papal cassock, often referred to as the san, is one of the most iconic and meaningful garments worn by a newly elected pope. This simple, yet profound piece of clothing plays a significant role in symbolizing the pope's transformation and new responsibilities. It is worn during the pope's first public appearance and marks the final step in his transition from private individual to the spiritual leader of over 1 billion Catholics worldwide. Symbolism of purity and humility. The color white is profoundly symbolic in Catholicism, representing purity, righteousness, and spiritual rebirth. When a pope dons the white cassock, it signifies that he is stepping into a role of purity and holiness, chosen by God to lead the Church. It is not just a ceremonial garment but a physical embodiment of the new life the pope is called to lead, one of deep humility, service, and devotion to God and the faithful. The white cassock is also seen as a direct reference to the pope's role as a servant of Christ. The pope's life, now in the public eye, is meant to be a living reflection of Christ's teachings and example. The cassock serves as a constant reminder to the pope that his authority is not rooted in worldly power or status but in the call to serve others selflessly, just as Christ did during his life on earth. Transitioning from the old to the new. Upon the election of a new pope, this cassock represents a significant transformation. The newly elected pope leaves behind his previous life, both in terms of personal identity and ambitions, and embraces the spiritual responsibility that comes with the papacy. The white cassock symbolizes not only the death of his former life but also a resurrection into his new identity as the Holy Father, a figurehead entrusted with the leadership of the universal Church. The transition is not just physical, but deeply spiritual. The act of wearing the cassock reflects a commitment to lead the Church with integrity and purity. The newly elected pope, by putting on this simple yet powerful garment, declares to the world that he is embracing his mission with humility, knowing that his role is not one of dominion but of service to Christ and his flock. The cassock's design and tradition. The design of the papal cassock is simple yet purposeful. Traditionally, it is made from a lightweight, flowing fabric, often silk or cotton, tailored to fit the pope's frame while maintaining a dignified and regal appearance. It typically has a high collar and is accompanied by a long train that drapes behind the pope. This long train not only adds to the visual grandeur of the cassock but also symbolizes the pope's elevated spiritual authority and the weight of his responsibilities. In addition to the cassock itself, the pope wears a white sacchetto, skullcap, that matches the cassock, signifying his role as the supreme authority of the Catholic Church. Together, the cassock and sacchetto present a complete visual representation of the pope's sacred duty and elevated position. The role of the white papal cassock in the election ceremony. The wearing of the white cassock is a pivotal moment in the papal election process. After a new pope is elected, the first thing he does before making his public appearance on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica is to don this cassock. Once dressed, the newly elected pope is ready for his first public address, where he will address the people gathered in the square and the entire church through the famous words, Habemus Papam, we have a pope. The cassock, in this moment, is not merely clothing, it is a physical representation of the pope's spiritual transformation. The visual image of a new pope, dressed in white and taking his place at the heart of the Catholic Church, is an awe-inspiring moment for millions of Catholics around the world. It marks not just the beginning of a papacy but also the renewal of the Church's spiritual mission. A legacy of symbolism and tradition. The tradition of the white papal cassock has deep historical roots, stretching back centuries. Throughout history, the cassock has evolved, but its significance has remained steadfast. It represents the continuation of papal tradition and the enduring spiritual legacy of the papacy itself. Each new pope, by donning this sacred garment, connects himself to the long line of papal predecessors, all of whom have worn it as a sign of their commitment to the service of God and the Church. The white cassock is also an enduring symbol of the Pope's connection to the faithful. While the cassock might seem to be a solitary garment worn only by the Pope, in reality it serves as a bridge between the Pope and the people of the Church. By wearing this cassock, the Pope reminds the world that he is not above them but among them. One of them, called to lead with humility and love. The white papal cassock is more than just a garment, it is a powerful and sacred symbol of the Pope's role as a servant leader of the Catholic Church. It is a reminder of the Pope's vow to live a life of humility, purity, and service, and to lead by example, following in the footsteps of Christ. This cassock marks the beginning of a new chapter not only for the Pope but for the Church as a whole, as the new Pope steps into his role with grace, responsibility, and faith. The role of the white papal cassock in papal engagements. After the inaugural moment of donning the white cassock, its significance continues to be woven throughout the Pope's papacy. During his public appearances, both in Vatican City and internationally, the white cassock remains a constant symbol of his role as the spiritual father of the Catholic Church. Whether the Pope is leading a Mass, participating in public prayer, meeting with world leaders, or addressing the faithful, the cassock is a visual cue of his office and the sacred responsibility he bears. The cassock is worn during the most solemn and important moments of the Pope's life, from canonization ceremonies to meetings with the faithful. Its presence in these moments is not just ceremonial but deeply symbolic, reinforcing the message that the Pope is the representative of Christ on earth, a figure who brings the teachings of Jesus to the people through his actions, words, and leadership. The symbolic weight of the white cassock is especially evident when the Pope travels abroad. During papal visits, the cassock is often a central feature in how the Pope is visually perceived, connecting him with the people of various nations while simultaneously reinforcing his connection to the universal Church. In these instances, the cassock also represents the Pope's pastoral mission, meeting with local churches, understanding their needs, and fostering unity among all members of the global Catholic family. The white cassock, an instrument of unification. The white cassock is also an important instrument in unifying the Catholic faithful across diverse cultures and nations. As the Pope moves through different countries and interacts with people from a variety of backgrounds, his white cassock transcends cultural and linguistic differences. The cassock serves as a reminder that, regardless of geographical location, Catholics around the world are part of the same Church, led by one spiritual Father. When the Pope addresses a congregation, whether in a vast public square or an intimate church setting, the white cassock helps him stand as a figure who bridges all boundaries. His appearance in this distinctive garment signals that he is a representative of the universal Church, one whose spiritual authority extends beyond borders and nationalities. Through the simple yet powerful symbolism of the cassock, the Pope becomes a unifier, reminding Catholics that their faith is both personal and universal. A connection to the Church's past. The white papal cassock also serves as a link to the rich history and tradition of the papacy. The tradition of the Pope wearing white dates back to the 16th century when Pope Pius V, a Dominican friar, adopted the white cassock as part of his religious habit. While the tradition of wearing white was not initially universal, it soon became associated with the papacy, and today, the white cassock is a distinctive mark of the papal office. By wearing the white cassock, the Pope not only honors the legacy of his predecessors but also carries the weight of centuries of tradition. It serves as a visual connection to the past, reminding Catholics of the long history of the papacy and its enduring role in the life of the Church. The white cassock stands as a symbol of continuity, a reminder that while the world may change, the papal office remains steadfast in its mission to lead and serve the faithful. The papal cassock and the call to service. For the Pope, the white cassock is not just a garment but a constant reminder of his personal call to service. Each time the Pope dons the cassock, it is a reaffirmation of his vow to dedicate his life to serving God and his people. The cassock, in all its simplicity and beauty, represents a lifestyle of devotion, self-sacrifice, and a commitment to guiding the Church with love and humility. The Pope's call to service is embodied in the very nature of the white cassock. Unlike other members of the clergy who wear dark robes, the Pope's white cassock symbolizes the unique responsibility he bears as the earthly representative of Christ. His role is not about status or privilege, rather, it is about service to others. This is why the cassock is worn not only for public occasions but also during the most private and sacred moments of the Pope's life, such as in prayer and reflection. In this way, the white papal cassock serves as a daily reminder of the Pope's sacred duty, encapsulating the essence of his mission. It symbolizes the constant call to serve the Church, to shepherd the faithful, and to be a beacon of Christ's love in the world. The enduring significance of the white papal cassock. The white papal cassock, or san, remains one of the most visible and poignant symbols of the papacy. From the moment it is worn by the newly elected Pope, it signifies not just his role as the spiritual leader of the Catholic Church but also his commitment to lead with humility, purity, and love. It is a constant reminder of the Pope's sacred duty to serve Christ and his people, a duty that transcends the boundaries of culture, geography, and time. Whether seen on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica or during international papal visits, the white cassock continues to inspire awe and reverence among Catholics worldwide. It unites the faithful, connects the Pope to the Church's past, and serves as a symbol of the transformative power of faith and service. As the Pope wears it, he not only carries the weight of his own responsibility but also the hopes and prayers of millions of Catholics who look to him for guidance, inspiration, and leadership in their journey of faith. Number 2. The Fisherman's Ring, a symbol of apostolic authority and unity. One of the most iconic and sacred items given to the newly elected Pope before he steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica is the Fisherman's Ring. This simple yet powerful gold ring, engraved with a striking image of St. Peter, has profound theological and historical significance. It is not just a piece of jewelry, it is a symbol of the Pope's role as the successor to St. Peter, the first Pope, and his mission to shepherd the entire Catholic Church. The design and meaning behind the ring. The Fisherman's Ring traditionally features a representation of St. Peter, the apostle who is often depicted holding a fishing rod, symbolizing his role as a fisher of men in the Gospel. St. Peter, according to Catholic tradition, was entrusted by Christ with the keys to the kingdom of heaven, Matthew 16 verse 19, and became the foundation upon which the Church was built. This image on the Fisherman's Ring is a powerful reminder that the Pope, in his office, continues St. Peter's mission of spreading the gospel and guiding the faithful. The ring typically also bears the inscription of the Pope's name and, sometimes, the year of his election. The ring is crafted in gold, a metal that represents the purity and holiness of the office, as well as the weight of the responsibilities the Pope assumes upon election. The ring's relatively simple design contrasts with its immense symbolic importance, emphasizing that the Pope is a servant leader of the Church, rather than a figure of wealth or status. The Fisherman's Ring as a mark of authority. The Fisherman's Ring is more than just a symbol of the Pope's connection to St. Peter, it is also an important mark of papal authority. When the newly elected Pope is crowned, the ring serves as a visible sign of his apostolic power and the unique authority given to him to lead the worldwide Church. The Pope is regarded as the Vicar of Christ on earth, and the Fisherman's Ring is a key emblem of that spiritual and temporal power. Historically, the ring has been used as a tool of authentication. For centuries, it was used to seal papal documents, much like a wax seal would authenticate important correspondence. Each Pope's ring bears a unique design and image, ensuring that documents and letters are distinctly identified as coming from the Pope himself. This practice continues to the present day, although modern advancements have made the use of the ring for sealing purposes less common. Nevertheless, the Fisherman's Ring remains a crucial item of papal authority and a powerful symbol of the Church's continuity. The Fisherman's Ring and papal humility. Despite its grand symbolism, the Fisherman's Ring also underscores the humility required of the Pope. The very act of receiving this ring during the papal election ceremony is a reminder that the Pope is, first and foremost, a servant of the people. Just as St. Peter was called to serve, so too is the Pope called to serve both God and his people. The ring signifies the Pope's commitment to lead the Church with humility, recognizing that his authority is not one of personal glory, but of service to others. This humility is reinforced by the fact that, upon the death of a pope, the Fisherman's Ring is typically destroyed. This ritual, which involves the breaking of the ring, is a sign that the deceased pope's authority has come to an end. The ring's destruction also serves as a symbol of the ultimate humility that all leaders, even the pope, must accept, the inevitability of death and the transient nature of earthly power. The fisherman's ring in the papal election. Before the new pope steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to greet the world, he is presented with the fisherman's ring. This moment marks the official commencement of his papacy. The new pope's first act of wearing the ring serves as a public declaration of his readiness to assume the mantle of St. Peter's successor. It is a solemn reminder of the sacred trust placed upon him by the Church and the faithful. As the pope steps out onto the balcony, the fisherman's ring serves as a beacon of the Church's unity and continuity. It links the new pope not only to his immediate predecessors but to the 2,000-year history of the papacy. In this way, the fisherman's ring serves as a reminder that the pope's authority comes from Christ, through St. Peter, and that it is exercised for the good of the entire Church. The ring, therefore, becomes both a personal and public declaration of the pope's duty to guide, teach, and protect the flock entrusted to him. The spiritual and global impact of the fisherman's ring. The fisherman's ring transcends its function as a symbol of authority. It is a visible sign of the Pope's spiritual leadership and his connection to the entire Catholic world. When the Pope wears this ring, it is not just a personal ornament, it is an outward sign of his mission to care for the Church and its members. For Catholics around the world, the fisherman's ring is a powerful reminder of the Pope's role as the spiritual leader of the Church. The image of St. Peter on the ring signifies that the Pope is not simply a figurehead but the living embodiment of Christ's authority on earth, called to serve the global Church with faith, wisdom and love. When the Pope steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, he is not only presenting himself as a leader but also as a servant of Christ. The fisherman's ring, while modest in design, carries an immense spiritual weight that transcends its earthly form. For Catholics, it serves as a constant reminder that the Pope is a servant leader, called to guide the Church and uphold its teachings. A lasting symbol of papal mission. The fisherman's ring is one of the most sacred and enduring symbols of the papacy. It encapsulates the Pope's role as a servant of Christ, a leader of the faithful, and a direct successor to St. Peter. Its significance is not just historical but deeply spiritual, reminding the Pope and the faithful alike that papal authority is grounded in humility, service, and a commitment to the universal Church. As the newly elected Pope steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, the fisherman's ring is a visible reminder of the weight of his office and the profound responsibility he bears. The ring is not just an accessory, it is a sacred relic that links the Pope to the Church's past, grounds him in its present, and reminds him of his ultimate mission, to shepherd God's people with love, humility, and unwavering faith. The fisherman's ring, a symbol of apostolic authority. The fisherman's ring is one of the most iconic and significant symbols in the papal tradition, signifying the Pope's role as the successor of St. Peter, the first Pope, and as the supreme leader of the Catholic Church. This ring, deeply rooted in the Church's history, is a powerful representation of both the papacy and the apostolic mission entrusted to the Pope by Christ. The origin and symbolism of the fisherman's ring. The fisherman's ring traces its origins back to the very foundation of the papacy itself. The title Fisherman is a direct reference to St. Peter, who was called by Jesus to be a fisher of men. In the Gospel of Matthew, 4:19, Jesus tells Peter, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." This calling symbolizes the mission of the Pope and the entire Church, to bring souls to Christ, leading them to salvation through the Gospel. The ring itself depicts the image of St. Peter holding a fishing net. It is traditionally cast in gold, although silver versions also exist. The ring bears an image of St. Peter, the first Pope, and often includes the words fisher of men in Latin, further emphasizing its connection to the Church's mission of evangelization. For every newly elected Pope, the fisherman's ring serves as a potent reminder that, just as St. Peter was called by Jesus to lead the early Church, the new Pope is now called to shepherd the global Church. The ring also signifies the apostolic nature of the papacy, which links the current Pope directly to the line of Peter, passed down for over 2,000 years. The significance of the ring in papal ceremonies. Upon being elected, the new Pope receives the fisherman's ring as a symbol of his authority. During his inaugural Mass, the Pope wears the ring, and it becomes one of the most recognizable aspects of his papal regalia. The ring is often sealed with the Pope's personal insignia or the coat of arms that will identify him during his papacy. This seal is used to authenticate papal documents, an important function that ensures the validity of papal decrees and declarations. The fisherman's ring is not just a symbol of the Pope's office, it also has a practical purpose in the daily workings of the Church. The ring is used in papal bulls, letters, and official communications, where the ring seal is impressed onto the document. This seal represents the Pope's authority, and the ring itself signifies the Pope's role as the supreme judge and teacher of the Catholic Church. The sealing of the ring, a symbol of the Pope's solemn responsibility. A notable ritual associated with the fisherman's ring is the sealing of the ring after the Pope's election. Traditionally, upon the election of a new Pope, the ring is sealed with hot wax to mark his reign. This act is performed immediately after the election and is an important ceremonial event. The sealing of the fisherman's ring signifies the commencement of the Pope's papacy and the start of his mission to lead the Church. In the past, the sealing of the ring involved a more elaborate process, where the new Pope would also receive a ceremonial papal bull, or decree, which would be sealed with the fisherman's ring. This papal bull, marking the beginning of the Pope's reign, was sent to all corners of the world to announce the election of the new Pope. The process symbolized the global reach of the papacy and the Church's ongoing mission of evangelization. The fisherman's ring and the death of the Pope. The fisherman's ring also has a significant role after the death of a Pope. Upon the death of the reigning Pope, the fisherman's ring is destroyed as a symbol of the end of his papacy. This destruction is done solemnly by an official of the Vatican, and it marks the close of that Pope's reign and the beginning of the period of sede vacante, the vacancy of the papal office, until the election of a new Pope. The destruction of the fisherman's ring is a sign that the Pope's earthly mission has come to a close, and the Church enters a time of mourning and reflection. The destruction of the ring is both a practical act, to prevent the use of the ring inappropriately, and a symbolic one, signaling that the mission of that particular Pope is completed. The Pope's personal connection to the ring. For each Pope, the fisherman's ring is deeply personal. Beyond its symbolic significance as a tool of authority, the ring represents the Pope's unique call to serve God's people. When the Pope is presented with the ring, he is not simply receiving an item of power, he is accepting a sacred responsibility to lead, guide, and protect the Catholic faithful. The fisherman's ring reminds the Pope that, like St. Peter, his authority is ultimately a gift from God and that he must exercise it in humility, wisdom, and love for Christ's Church. It is said that when a Pope dies, the ring is destroyed to symbolize the closing of his papacy, which serves as a reminder of the transient nature of earthly authority and the eternal mission of the Church. However, throughout a Pope's reign, the fisherman's ring serves as a reminder of the immense responsibility and sacred trust bestowed upon the Pope. The fisherman's ring as a universal symbol. The fisherman's ring is universally recognized by Catholics around the world as a symbol of the papacy. Its simplicity and history have made it an iconic part of the Pope's vestments and have given it profound theological and cultural significance. The fisherman's ring is not just an emblem of power but a reminder of the Pope's mission to serve the people of God and to fulfill Christ's call to spread the gospel to all corners of the earth. The ring reminds Catholics that the Pope is not simply an individual leader but the earthly representative of Christ, called to guide the Church with faithfulness, humility, and devotion. For Catholics worldwide, the fisherman's ring serves as a constant reminder of the papacy's deep spiritual significance and the role of the Pope in upholding the teachings of Christ and leading the Church with love and compassion. The fisherman's ring as a legacy of faith. The fisherman's ring is more than just an artifact of papal regalia, it is a profound symbol of the Pope's apostolic authority, a reminder of the legacy of St. Peter, and an emblem of the Pope's sacred responsibility to serve Christ's Church. Through this ring, the Pope embraces the weight of leadership, guided by the example set by St. Peter, who was entrusted by Christ to lead the early Church. For the faithful, the fisherman's ring is a reminder of the continuity and unity of the Catholic Church, bound by a tradition that stretches back over 2 millennia. The Pope, as the bearer of this sacred ring, is charged with the responsibility of shepherding the Church toward Christ, guiding it through times of joy and difficulty alike, and remaining ever faithful to the mission entrusted to him by Christ himself. Number 3. The papal pallium, a sacred vestment of unity and authority. Another deeply significant item that the newly elected Pope receives before stepping onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica is the papal pallium. While the fisherman's ring symbolizes the Pope's authority as the successor of St. Peter, the pallium represents his unity with the broader Church, particularly with the archbishops and bishops in communion with the papacy. What is the pallium? The pallium is a white woolen band that is worn over the Pope's shoulders and around his neck. Traditionally made from the wool of lambs, the pallium is adorned with 6 black crosses, symbolizing the Pope's commitment to protecting the flock of the faithful. The wool used in the pallium holds symbolic meaning, as it is believed to represent the care of a shepherd for his flock, reflecting Christ's role as the Good Shepherd, John 10 verse 11. The pallium is a symbol of the Pope's pastoral mission and his role in guiding the entire Church. In the Catholic tradition, the pallium is also worn by metropolitan archbishops as a sign of their authority within their archdioceses. When the Pope wears it, it signifies that he is the universal pastor, the protector, and the leader of the global Catholic community. Historical origins of the pallium. The origins of the pallium trace back to the early centuries of the Church. In the time of the Roman Empire, it was a garment worn by Roman officials and dignitaries, symbolizing their authority. Early popes adopted the pallium as a distinctive garment that symbolized their role as leaders of the Christian Church. Over time, its design evolved to reflect its deeper spiritual and theological meaning. The pallium became uniquely associated with the papacy during the reign of Pope Honorius I in the 7th century. During this period, the pallium was granted to metropolitan archbishops as a mark of their authority. The tradition of the Pope wearing the pallium became formalized, with the Pope being the one who consecrated the wool used for the palliums of archbishops, reinforcing the idea that the Pope was the unifying figure in the Catholic Church. The ritual of receiving the pallium. For the newly elected Pope, the pallium is presented in a solemn ceremony as part of the papal inauguration. The Pope is clothed in the pallium as a sign of his connection to Christ the Good Shepherd and his responsibility to care for the people of God. The ritual is rich with symbolism. The pallium is not just a garment, it is an outward sign of the Pope's mission to guide and protect the faithful, keeping them united in their journey of faith. While the pallium is a personal symbol for each pope, it also serves to unite him with the archbishops and bishops around the world. When he receives the pallium, the Pope is reaffirming his role as the chief shepherd, with authority not just in Rome, but across the global Church. This symbolizes the universal nature of the Church, where the Pope is the visible bond of unity for all Catholics, regardless of geography or culture. The spiritual significance of the pallium. Beyond its outward symbolism, the pallium carries a deep spiritual significance. It is a sign of the Pope's closeness to Christ and his commitment to serving the Church with humility and care. The wool, which is typically obtained from lambs, symbolizes the Pope's role as the shepherd of Christ's flock. The lamb, often associated with Jesus Christ in the New Testament, reinforces the notion that the Pope's role is not one of power, but of service to the people of God. The black crosses on the pallium are a poignant reminder of the Pope's responsibility to bear witness to the gospel, even in times of hardship and suffering. The crosses remind the Pope that, as the Vicar of Christ, his role is not only one of leadership but one of sacrifice and witness to the suffering and death of Christ. Furthermore, the pallium is often seen as a symbol of the unity of the Church. Just as the ring and the white papal cassock symbolize papal authority, the pallium represents the Pope's role in uniting the different parts of the Church into a single body. In this way, the pallium serves as a reminder that the Pope's authority is exercised for the sake of unity, peace, and the mission of the Church in the world. The pallium and papal humility. Similar to the fisherman's ring, the pallium is also a reminder of the humility required of the Pope. While it is a symbol of authority, it is also a vestment of service. The Pope is not merely a ruler but a servant leader, called to guide the Church with humility, compassion, and a deep sense of responsibility. The pallium's simple design and its association with the wool of lambs emphasize the need for the Pope to be a shepherd, tending to the needs of his flock and guiding them with tenderness. The fact that the Pope wears the pallium as part of his daily vestments further reinforces the notion that his role is not one of personal glory but of service. It is a daily reminder to the Pope that he is called to shepherd the Church, carrying out his duties with gentleness, compassion, and love. The papal pallium as a symbol of unity and service. The papal pallium is a powerful and sacred symbol of the Pope's pastoral responsibility and authority. It is a visible reminder that the Pope is not just the leader of the Catholic Church but its chief shepherd, called to care for the faithful with compassion and humility. The woolen garment connects the Pope to the rich traditions of the early Church, reminding him of the eternal mission entrusted to him by Christ himself, to tend to the flock and guide them toward salvation. As the newly elected Pope steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, wearing the papal pallium, he publicly embraces his role as the universal shepherd of the Church, committed to leading and uniting all Catholics in the pursuit of holiness. The pallium is not just a piece of clothing, it is a profound spiritual symbol that reflects the Pope's deep connection to the mission of Christ and his calling to serve God's people with unwavering love, faith, and humility. The papal pallium, the symbol of spiritual authority and responsibility. The making of the pallium. The pallium is not just a symbolic piece of cloth, it is created with a great deal of care and reverence. The wool used to make the pallium comes from lambs that are traditionally blessed on the feast of St. Agnes, which falls on January 21st. The lambs are raised in a place with a rich history of wool production, known for their purity and simplicity. Once blessed, the wool is carefully crafted into the pallium by expert artisans, ensuring that every detail is executed with precision. The connection to St. Agnes is important because, in Christian tradition, lambs are a symbol of purity, innocence, and sacrifice, attributes that are central to Christ's life and death. St. Agnes, who was martyred at a young age, is often depicted holding a lamb, further reinforcing the idea of sacrifice and purity that is reflected in the pallium. The pallium is then formally presented to the Pope during his papal inauguration ceremony. It's a highly ceremonial moment that not only marks the beginning of his papacy but also affirms his role as the spiritual leader of the Catholic Church. This ceremonial significance places the pallium at the heart of the papal office, emphasizing that the Pope is meant to act in the service of the Church, much as Christ did during his earthly ministry. The role of the pallium in papal functions. While the fisherman's ring is a visible and powerful symbol of the Pope's personal authority, the papal pallium carries more of a spiritual and universal meaning. It is not only worn at the Pope's investiture but also serves as a reminder of the duties he will carry out during his papacy. The pallium is worn during Mass and other papal functions, demonstrating the Pope's role as the servant leader, humble yet authoritative, whose responsibility is to serve Christ and his Church. As a symbol of the Pope's pastoral office, the pallium is often worn by archbishops as well, particularly during special occasions and ceremonies, reinforcing the connection between the Pope and his bishops. However, it is the Pope's special relationship with the pallium that sets it apart. It represents the Pope's role as the ultimate shepherd, charged with guiding the flock of the entire Catholic world. The papal pallium and the Church's mission. The papal pallium transcends its physical form. It encapsulates the idea of unity within the global Catholic Church. The pallium is not only a vestment of authority but one of deep spiritual commitment. It reminds the Pope that his primary responsibility is to nurture and guide the faithful toward salvation, much as a shepherd cares for his sheep. For the global Catholic community, the pallium serves as a tangible reminder that the Pope is not merely an administrative figure, he is, above all, the spiritual leader tasked with guiding the Church through times of joy and sorrow. His role is not about power but about service, serving God and serving humanity through the Church. The pallium, then, is an outward sign of the Pope's inward commitment to living out this mission faithfully. This significance is reinforced through the very nature of the pallium's design. It is a simple, humble garment that evokes the simplicity of Christ's life and ministry. The Pope, as the Vicar of Christ, is called to follow in the footsteps of Christ and serve with love, humility, and unwavering dedication. The pallium and the global Church. The pallium, while worn by the Pope, also signifies his responsibility toward all of Christ's Church, its clergy, religious orders, and lay faithful alike. When a newly appointed Pope wears the pallium, it symbolizes that he is the visible head of the entire Catholic Church. By taking on this sacred mantle, he demonstrates his deep connection to all corners of the world, regardless of nationality, language, or culture. The papacy is not limited to the Vatican, it is a global office. The pallium serves as a symbol of the universality of the Catholic faith, reminding the faithful that the Pope is a figure of unity across the worldwide Church. It is a powerful testament to the Pope's role in fostering communion among the diverse peoples of the world, all united in faith under Christ. A daily reminder of service and sacrifice. For the Pope, wearing the papal pallium is a daily act of remembrance. Each time he dons the pallium, it is a reminder of his sacred responsibility to tend to the flock of Christ. Whether it's during a solemn mass or an audience with pilgrims, the pallium constantly reminds the Pope of the spiritual weight of his office. Furthermore, the pallium emphasizes that the Pope is called to lead with compassion, not with force or power. It is a garment that symbolizes the humility required of one who carries the weight of leadership. The very nature of the woolen garment, soft, simple, yet powerful, reflects this paradox: strength through humility, leadership through service. The pallium as a timeless symbol of leadership. The papal pallium is more than just a ceremonial garment, it is a profound symbol of the Pope's role as the shepherd of Christ's Church. It is a sign of his pastoral authority and his deep commitment to serving the faithful. It reflects the Pope's mission to guide the people of God with love, humility, and faithfulness to Christ's teachings. As the newly elected Pope steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, wearing the papal pallium, he embraces the responsibility of leading the Catholic Church, not with worldly power but with a heart full of charity, care, and dedication. The pallium is both a symbol of the weight of the office and a reminder of the humility required to fulfill the Pope's mission. In this sense, it is one of the most important and sacred items that a newly elected Pope receives, embodying the essence of what it means to be the Vicar of Christ on earth. Number 4. The papal ferula, staff, a sign of spiritual leadership and authority. The papal ferula is one of the most significant and symbolic items that a newly elected Pope receives before stepping onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. This ornate staff, which is carried by the Pope during important liturgical ceremonies, represents his role as the spiritual leader of the global Catholic Church. The origin and meaning of the papal ferula. The word ferula is derived from the Latin word ferula, meaning a staff or rod. For centuries, the papal ferula has been a central component of papal regalia, signifying the authority of the Pope as a shepherd to the flock of Christ. The staff is not merely an ornament of power, it is deeply symbolic, representing the pastoral care of the Pope and his responsibility to guide, protect, and lead the Church with Christ's example of selfless service. While the papal ferula is often seen during ceremonial moments, such as Mass, it holds deeper spiritual meaning. It is a representation of the shepherd's crook, reminding the Pope of his duty to shepherd the faithful with kindness, compassion, and wisdom. As Christ referred to himself as the Good Shepherd, the Pope is seen as the successor to St. Peter, charged with the responsibility of tending to Christ's flock. The papal ferula serves as a visual symbol of this solemn mission, underscoring the papacy's sacred duty to lead the Church with divine guidance. The design of the papal ferula. The design of the papal ferula has evolved over time, reflecting both historical shifts in papal aesthetics and the spiritual emphasis of different papacies. Traditionally, the staff was a simple rod, but it has since become more ornate, often including intricate decorations and symbols that align with the themes and priorities of each papacy. The modern papal ferula, used since the papacy of Pope Paul VI, 1963 to 1978, is characterized by its striking design, a large cross at the top, symbolizing the centrality of Christ's sacrifice, with the staff curving gently downward. The cross serves as a reminder that the Pope's role is always to point the faithful toward Christ. The ferula, crafted with great care, is a piece of ecclesiastical art, symbolizing the union of beauty and function in the papal office. While earlier papal ferulae were made of gold and silver, the more recent designs have featured wood, reflecting simplicity and humility. This change also symbolizes the modern papacy's desire to return to the humility and service of the early Church, where the Pope is seen not as a ruler, but as a servant to God and his people. The ceremonial role of the papal ferula. When a new Pope is elected, the papal ferula becomes an important part of his liturgical attire. It is presented to the Pope before he makes his first public appearance on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. The ferula is typically used in the Pope's hands during major liturgical events such as the solemn Mass of Inauguration, where he begins his papacy by leading the Church in prayer. In these moments, the papal ferula symbolizes the Pope's role as the central figure of spiritual leadership and unity in the Church. The staff is not used in a domineering way but rather is held with reverence, demonstrating the Pope's role as a servant leader in the footsteps of Jesus Christ. In contrast to secular symbols of power such as crowns or scepters, the papal ferula conveys humility and spiritual authority. It serves as a reminder that the Pope's leadership is grounded in Christ's love and sacrifice, not in the exercise of worldly power. The papal ferula as a pastoral symbol. The papal ferula is a visual manifestation of the Pope's pastoral role within the Catholic Church. The staff, which symbolizes the shepherd's crook, reinforces the Pope's role as a guide and protector of the faithful. The act of carrying the papal ferula is a reminder that the Pope is tasked with the care of Christ's flock, leading them in truth, hope, and love. For centuries, the ferula has been used as a symbol of the Pope's spiritual authority and leadership, reflecting his responsibility to guide the faithful toward salvation. The Pope, like a shepherd with his sheep, is charged with leading the Church on its journey of faith, teaching, and service. The papal ferula serves as a powerful symbol of this pastoral responsibility and the weight of authority that the Pope carries in his leadership role. The papal ferula in modern papacy. Since its introduction, the papal ferula has been used in countless papal ceremonies, including Mass, Holy Week liturgies, and the election and installation of a new pope. The modern papacy, particularly under the leadership of Pope Paul VI, sought to make the ferula more than just a symbol of regal power. It was to be a humble and sacred instrument of leadership that conveyed the Pope's deep connection to Christ and his role as a servant to all. The ferula has since become an enduring symbol of the modern Church's pastoral priorities. It is a tool used not for rulership but for guiding the faithful to Christ's teachings, carrying the burden of leadership with grace and love. The papal ferula also serves as a reminder that the papacy is not about personal power, but about service to God and service to the people of God. The papal ferula, a powerful tradition and spiritual significance. For Catholics around the world, the papal ferula represents much more than a ceremonial staff. It is a symbol of the Pope's sacred office and his direct connection to the apostolic mission of St. Peter. The staff is an integral part of the spiritual tools that the Pope receives upon his election, and it underscores the importance of humility, service, and leadership in the papal role. The papal ferula is not just an ornament or a mere accessory, it is a profound reminder of the Pope's mission to be Christ's representative on earth. It is through the papal ferula that the Pope fulfills his sacred role as a leader and servant, guiding the Church to greater faith, unity, and truth. The papal ferula as a symbol of sacred authority. The papal ferula is a powerful symbol of papal authority, reflecting the mission of the Pope to serve as a shepherd to the faithful. More than just a ceremonial staff, it embodies the spiritual responsibility of the Pope to guide the Church with wisdom, humility, and love. As the Pope steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, holding this sacred instrument, he is not merely taking on a title, he is embracing a divine calling to lead the universal Church with Christ-like compassion and leadership. The papal ferula, with its cross and simple, humble design, continues to remind the Pope and the world of the true nature of the papacy, a mission rooted in service to Christ and his Church. The staff symbolizes the Pope's role as a shepherd, guiding his flock toward spiritual growth and eternal salvation. The papal ferula, a symbol of sacred authority and leadership. The papal ferula, which every newly elected pope receives, remains one of the most revered and symbolic items within the papal regalia. Its role extends far beyond that of a mere accessory. It is a powerful and visible symbol of the Pope's mission, connecting the Holy Office to both pastoral care and spiritual leadership. From the first moments of a pope's election, when he holds the papal ferula, it is a clear declaration of his role as the servant leader of the Catholic Church. The ferula's role in the First Papal Mass. Upon his election, the papal ferula accompanies the Pope in one of his most significant and sacred duties, presiding over the solemn Mass of inauguration. This is the first Mass that the newly elected Pope celebrates as the leader of the worldwide Church. The papal ferula serves as a physical representation of the Pope's pastoral authority during this Mass, but it is also a symbol of the Pope's connection to Christ's ultimate sacrifice. During this Mass, the Pope uses the ferula as an instrument for guiding the liturgy and connecting with the faithful. Just as the Pope's role is to shepherd the Church, the papal ferula helps him fulfill this sacred task by providing a ceremonial means of leadership and guidance. The ferula's relationship to the shepherd's crook. The papal ferula is often linked to the traditional image of the shepherd's crook, an instrument historically used by shepherds to guide their flock. In the same way that a shepherd leads his sheep, the Pope is called to lead the faithful with wisdom, care, and compassion. The design of the papal ferula, with its cross at the top, reinforces this analogy. It underscores the Pope's spiritual responsibility to lead the Church by example, with Christ as his model. The ferula also represents the Pope's connection to the mission of St. Peter, the first Pope, who was called by Christ to feed my sheep, John 21 verse 17. Thus, the staff is a reminder of the Pope's sacred mission, the weight of which is reflected not only in its symbolic significance but in its very use during the most solemn liturgical functions. The modern evolution of the papal ferula. The modern papal ferula, which was introduced by Pope Paul VI after the Second Vatican Council, represents a shift in papal symbolism, particularly in the context of liturgy and the role of the Pope. Before this change, the papal staff was often adorned with ornate jewels and decorative features, a reflection of the Church's wealth and power. However, Pope Paul VI, seeking to emphasize humility, opted for a simpler design for the ferula, one that would more directly communicate the Pope's role as a servant to the people. The papal ferula designed by Pope Paul VI is made of wood, with a simple, flowing design that emphasizes pastoral care rather than regal authority. The cross at the top, which was added to the ferula, stands as a clear reminder that the Pope's leadership is grounded in Christ's sacrifice on the cross. This design reflects the Pope's mission to serve the Church with humility and to guide the faithful in the spirit of Christ's love and sacrifice. The ferula's symbolic meaning for the global Church. The papal ferula has deep significance not only within the context of the papacy but also in its wider connection to the Catholic Church and its global mission. As the Pope presides over Mass or other significant liturgical events, the papal ferula is a visible and enduring reminder to the worldwide Church that the Pope holds a position of both spiritual leadership and profound responsibility. When the newly elected Pope steps out on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to offer his first blessing to the faithful, the papal ferula is one of the key items he carries. It is a powerful symbol that the Pope's leadership is deeply rooted in his faith, his service to God, and his commitment to leading the Catholic Church with compassion, humility, and love. The papal ferula thus serves as both a ceremonial object and a profound spiritual emblem. Its simple yet striking design serves as a reminder that the Pope's leadership is not about earthly power, but about the Christ-like service he offers to the Church. Holding the papal ferula signifies that the Pope is accepting the heavy and sacred task of leading the faithful with grace and devotion. The enduring significance of the papal ferula. As we reflect on the role and significance of the papal ferula, it becomes clear that this sacred staff is far more than an ornament or an accessory in papal regalia. It is a profound symbol of spiritual authority, pastoral care, and the Pope's solemn responsibility to lead the Church. From its historical origins to its modern design, the papal ferula represents the Pope's deep connection to Christ, the teachings of the Church, and his mission to serve the faithful. When the newly elected Pope receives the papal ferula before stepping onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, he is not just receiving a ceremonial object. He is taking on the sacred responsibility of shepherding the Church, leading with humility, wisdom, and love. This staff will accompany him throughout his papacy, symbolizing his commitment to guiding the Church in accordance with the teachings of Christ, serving the faithful, and leading by example. In the hands of the Pope, the papal ferula becomes a powerful reminder to all Catholics of the importance of leadership through service, compassion, and the selfless love that Christ exemplified. It is a tool for liturgical leadership, a symbol of pastoral care, and a lasting reminder of the sacred calling that the papacy represents. Number 5. The tsucchetto, papal skullcap, a mark of papal identity and humility. Among the sacred items a newly elected Pope receives before stepping onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, the tsucchetto stands as one of the most recognizable and significant pieces of papal regalia. While its role may seem modest in comparison to other ceremonial items like the papal ferula or the fisherman's ring, the tsucchetto carries profound symbolic weight within the Catholic Church. This small, skullcap-like hat is not just an accessory, it is a reminder of the Pope's unique role, his connection to his predecessors, and his commitment to humility in his position. The symbolism behind the tsucchetto. The tsucchetto is a symbol of the Pope's office, but it also carries deep theological significance. Worn by the Pope as part of his official attire, it symbolizes the Catholic Church's focus on tradition, humility, and service. The tsucchetto, typically made of silk or other light fabric, is worn snugly on the Pope's head as a sign of his commitment to his sacred calling. While zucchetti are worn by cardinals, bishops, and other clergy within the Church, the one worn by the Pope is unique in its color and significance. The Pope's zucchetto is traditionally white, setting him apart from other members of the clergy, who wear black, cardinals, or purple, bishops. This color choice reflects the Pope's unique role as the Vicar of Christ on earth, the supreme authority in the Catholic Church. The word zucchetto itself comes from the Italian word zucca, meaning pumpkin, which refers to the round, dome-like shape of the cap. The zucchetto is worn as a symbol of the Pope's recognition of his sacred duty to serve the Church, while also acknowledging the weight of the responsibility he bears. The tradition and purpose of the zucchetto. The use of the zucchetto dates back to the early centuries of Christianity, when bishops would wear a skullcap to signify their position within the Church. Over time, the practice became more formalized, with the zucchetto being adopted as a recognizable symbol of the Catholic clergy. For a newly elected pope, the zucchetto serves as a physical marker of his office, and it is one of the first items that he receives following his election. As the pope is officially recognized as the spiritual leader of the worldwide Catholic Church, the zucchetto connects him to the long history of papal tradition, beginning with St. Peter, who is believed to be the first pope. By donning this sacred item, the newly elected pope steps into a long line of spiritual leaders who have worn the zucchetto as a sign of their humility and dedication to the Church's mission. A humble reminder of Christ's leadership. While the zucchetto serves as a visible mark of the Pope's office, it also reflects the humility that is a cornerstone of the papacy. The Pope is not to be seen as a ruler or monarch in the worldly sense, but rather as a servant of God and the Church. The zucchetto symbolizes the Pope's willingness to follow Christ's example of humility. It is an outward expression of the Pope's internal commitment to live as a servant leader, just as Christ demonstrated in his life and ministry. In fact, the zucchetto is a modest piece of regalia compared to the larger, more ornate pieces of papal attire, such as the papal tiara, which was once a symbol of the papacy's authority over the Church. The simplicity of the zucchetto, with its unadorned white fabric, serves as a reminder that the true power of the Pope lies not in worldly authority but in spiritual leadership and service to others. The ceremonial role of the zucchetto. At the moment of his election, when the newly chosen Pope steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to greet the world, the zucchetto is a key part of his attire. It marks his elevation to the papacy and is the final touch to his sacred garments, signaling his new identity as the Vicar of Christ. It is worn during the inauguration Mass and throughout the first days of his papacy, signifying his readiness to embrace the responsibilities of his new office with faith and humility. While the zucchetto may not always be as prominently displayed as other papal items, it remains an integral part of the Pope's persona. It is a constant reminder that, in the Catholic tradition, leadership is not about power or prestige, but about service to others and a deep commitment to the teachings of Christ. The zucchetto as a universal symbol. In addition to its role within the papacy, the zucchetto is worn by bishops, cardinals, and some priests, making it a unifying symbol within the Catholic hierarchy. However, the Pope's white zucchetto is distinctly tied to his leadership, representing his connection to Christ and the Church's spiritual authority. When a new Pope is elected, his zucchetto is often one of the first visible signs of his papacy, worn during the announcement and public appearance that follows the election. It serves as a powerful visual statement that this man has been chosen to guide the Church and carry forward its mission in the world. The humility and significance of the zucchetto. The zucchetto is a small yet powerful symbol of the Pope's office, embodying both humility and spiritual authority. As the Pope dons the zucchetto, he is reminded of his sacred duty to serve God's people and lead the Church with compassion, humility, and wisdom. The zucchetto is not just a hat. It is a sign of the Pope's commitment to live as Christ did, as a servant leader. For a newly elected Pope, receiving the zucchetto is an important moment in his papacy. It marks his transition from a cardinal to the Vicar of Christ, and it underscores the unique responsibility he bears as the shepherd of the Church. When the newly elected Pope steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, the zucchetto is one of the first visible signs of his sacred calling, connecting him to centuries of papal tradition and the deep spiritual authority that the office demands. As with all the sacred items he receives, the zucchetto is a reminder that the papacy is not about personal glory but about following in the footsteps of Christ, serving the Church and its faithful with humility and love. The tsuketo, the symbol of spiritual authority and humility. The tsuketo is more than just a piece of ceremonial attire, it is a key symbol of the Pope's unique role in the Catholic Church. When a newly elected Pope receives the tsuketo, he is reminded not only of the immense responsibility he now carries, but also of the rich tradition and humility embedded in the papacy. The role of the tsuketo in the liturgical and ceremonial life of the Pope. The tsuketo holds a significant place in the daily life and public appearances of the Pope. It is worn during liturgical services, Mass, and many papal ceremonies, marking his position as the chief shepherd of the Catholic Church. The tsuketo, paired with the rest of the papal attire, becomes a visible reminder to the faithful of the Pope's sacred role and his continuous commitment to the teachings of Christ. The tsuketo also reflects a deeper theological concept, the Catholic belief that the Pope, as the Vicar of Christ, carries out Christ's mission on earth. The cap's simplicity and modesty are in stark contrast to the grandeur of other papal regalia, symbolizing that true leadership in the Church is rooted in service, not in worldly power or honor. The connection between the tsuketo and the Church hierarchy. Though it is most closely associated with the Pope, the tsuketo is also worn by cardinals, bishops, and certain priests, each according to their rank within the Church. For cardinals and bishops, the tsuketo signifies their commitment to the Church and their roles within the hierarchical structure of the Vatican. However, the Pope's tsuketo is distinct, often reflecting his supreme authority in the Church. For a newly elected Pope, the moment of receiving the tsuketo is one of solemn transition. The white tsuketo marks his elevation from a cardinal, or other cleric, to the highest office in the Church, emphasizing the significance of his unique responsibility. When a Pope is elected, he dons the tsuketo and other sacred regalia as a public declaration of his commitment to uphold the faith and teachings of the Catholic Church. The humble nature of the tsuketo. One of the most powerful aspects of the tsuketo is its profound humility. Unlike the more opulent regalia associated with other monarchs or world leaders, the tsuketo is a simple, unadorned garment. This simplicity is not a mere formality, it reflects a central aspect of papal leadership. The Pope is called to be a servant of the people, a shepherd guiding the faithful in the name of Christ. The tsuketo, in all its simplicity, serves as a constant reminder of that service. The visual significance of the tsuketo. When a newly elected Pope steps out onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to address the world for the first time, the tsuketo becomes one of the most striking elements of his attire. As the Pope greets the faithful, the tsuketo marks him as a servant leader, as the Vicar of Christ on earth. It is both a visual and spiritual marker of his role and a reminder that he is a spiritual figurehead, not a temporal ruler. Furthermore, the tsuketo is a symbol of the Church's continuity through the ages. Each Pope who wears the tsuketo is stepping into a centuries-old tradition of papal leadership, representing the unbroken line of succession from St. Peter, the first Pope, to the present-day leader of the Church. A tradition of devotion and humility. The tsuketo is more than a ceremonial item, it is a deep expression of the Church's values. When a new Pope receives this simple yet powerful symbol, he is reminded of the profound humility required to serve as the Vicar of Christ. Throughout the history of the papacy, the tsuketo has remained a constant, a reminder of the Pope's divine calling to lead with humility, compassion, and service. For the newly elected Pope, the tsuketo is not merely an item of attire, but a constant reminder of the sacred duties entrusted to him. Each time he dons it, whether in private prayer or public Mass, it brings him back to the core of his role. To serve the Church and the faithful, following the example set by Christ. A symbol of sacred duty. The tsuketo, simple in its design but profound in its symbolism, is one of the key sacred items that a newly elected Pope receives. It serves as a constant reminder of the humble nature of his leadership and the profound responsibility he carries as the spiritual leader of over 1 billion Catholics worldwide. As he steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, the tsuketo is a visible marker of his transition from cardinal to Pope, from servant to servant leader, and from man to Vicar of Christ. It stands as a humble yet powerful symbol of his sacred duty to guide, teach, and lead the faithful in the name of Christ. The red shoes, a symbol of papal suffering, authority, and humility. Among the most iconic and symbolic items a newly elected Pope receives is the red papal shoes, a footwear tradition steeped in history and laden with profound meaning. These shoes are not just a part of the Pope's ceremonial garb but carry deep theological and spiritual significance, representing his role as the earthly representative of Christ, as well as a symbol of humility, suffering, and the exercise of papal authority. The papal shoes, a rich tradition. The red shoes have been worn by popes for centuries, with the tradition tracing its origins to the Middle Ages. Initially, the red shoes were considered a marker of high ecclesiastical rank, a status symbol that identified the wearer as a member of the Catholic elite. However, over time, the shoes evolved into a more sacred symbol, reflective of the Pope's unique vocation and his identification with Christ's passion and suffering. The red shoes are crafted from luxurious materials, often fine leather, and they are typically worn only for special occasions, including papal masses and public appearances. These shoes are also part of the full papal regalia that the newly elected pope receives immediately after his election. The red color is one of the most significant elements of the shoes, symbolizing both Christ's sacrifice and the bloodshed of martyrs throughout church history. A symbol of suffering and martyrdom. For Catholics, the color red is not just a symbolic choice for the shoes, it speaks to the deep connection between the papacy and the suffering of Christ. The red shoes remind the Pope of his ultimate role as a servant of Christ and his commitment to following the path of sacrifice. The blood of Christ, shed for humanity's salvation, is symbolically echoed in the red shoes, linking the Pope to Christ's passion in a very personal and tangible way. Historically, red has also been the color of martyrdom, a connection that resonates deeply with the papacy. The Catholic Church has seen countless martyrs, bishops, priests, and lay people who gave their lives in witness to the faith. The red shoes are a visible sign that the Pope, while not a martyr himself, is called to lead with the same unwavering faith and commitment that many of the Church's saints and martyrs exhibited. Each time a new Pope steps forward in his red shoes, he carries with him the weight of those who have gone before him, particularly the martyrs, who died for their faith. The shoes thus symbolize not only the Pope's personal journey of suffering but also his solidarity with all those who have borne witness to the faith through their own trials and sacrifices. The symbol of papal authority. In addition to their association with suffering and martyrdom, the red shoes also symbolize papal authority. The Pope is the Vicar of Christ on earth, the one who holds the spiritual and administrative leadership of the entire Catholic Church. The red shoes serve as a visible reminder of the authority that he has been entrusted with, authority that is meant to be wielded in humility, service, and faithfulness to Christ. The tradition of the red shoes was long associated with the papacy's power and privilege. Over time, they became a sign of not just office but also a visual mark of the papal office's ancient heritage. When the Pope wears these shoes, he is not just a religious leader, he is a reminder of the continuous line of papal authority, from St. Peter to the present day. In recent years, there has been a shift in how the red shoes are perceived. Pope Francis, for instance, has often chosen not to wear them in favor of more humble footwear, aligning with his focus on simplicity and humility in his papacy. Yet, even in their absence, the red shoes continue to carry profound symbolic weight, both for the Pope and the people he serves. A visible marker of papal humility. While the red shoes symbolize authority, they also carry a counterbalance, humility. The very nature of papal leadership is that it is always exercised with the understanding that the Pope is first and foremost a servant. The red shoes, as part of the papal attire, serve as a reminder that the Pope's authority is not for personal gain or honor, but to serve the people of God. The wearing of the red shoes invites the Pope to reflect on his leadership as one of service rather than grandeur, one that is meant to echo Christ's own example of humble leadership. Pope Francis has spoken about the need for the Pope to remain close to the people, and his choice to occasionally forego the red shoes is an expression of this desire for simplicity and a focus on the pastoral mission. A tradition with profound meaning. The red shoes are much more than a ceremonial item, they are a powerful symbol of the papacy's dual role, authority and humility. As the newly elected Pope steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica for the first time, the red shoes are a visual representation of the sacred responsibility he is assuming, one that is rooted in the suffering of Christ and the martyrs, while also affirming his position as the earthly leader of the Catholic Church. Though their use has evolved over time, the red shoes continue to stand as a rich and meaningful symbol for the Pope, inviting him to remember the sacrifices of the past while carrying the mantle of authority for the future. In them, the Pope is reminded that his leadership must always be exercised with both reverence for the past and humility for the great task at hand. The red shoes, a symbol of the papacy's sacred mission. While the red shoes are one of the most iconic and symbolic items associated with the papacy, their significance is multifaceted, drawing from both historical roots and the evolving vision of the papacy in the modern era. The shoes as a reflection of papal tradition. For centuries, the red shoes have been intimately linked with the papacy, reflecting not just the Pope's elevated status, but also the continuity of the Church's leadership through the ages. This footwear, often crafted from high-quality leather and designed with careful attention to detail, has long been considered an essential element of the papal wardrobe. It is a distinct part of the papal attire that sets the Pope apart from other clerics and serves as a symbol of his role as the leader of the worldwide Catholic community. In the early days of the papacy, red was a color traditionally associated with both royalty and martyrdom. The red shoes were part of the elaborate ceremonial dress that communicated the Pope's noble standing, yet their meaning deepened as they became a symbol of the Pope's identification with Christ's suffering. As Christ was crowned with thorns and shed his blood for the salvation of humanity, so too does the Pope, in his leadership role, embody the weight of the Church's mission, which often involves great sacrifice. The humility of the red shoes, Pope Francis' choice. Despite their historical connection with the highest levels of papal authority, recent popes, particularly Pope Francis, have used the red shoes to communicate a message of humility. Pope Francis, known for his emphasis on simplicity and closeness to the poor, made waves when he opted not to wear the traditional red papal shoes for much of his papacy. Instead, he was often seen in more modest footwear, including brown shoes, aligning with his desire to reject the pomp and circumstance often associated with the office. This shift was not only a personal preference but also a theological statement. Pope Francis emphasized that the papacy should be about serving others, especially the marginalized and the suffering, rather than living in luxury or displaying authority through symbols of power. In this context, Pope Francis' choice to forego the red shoes was seen as a reflection of his pastoral priorities, to lead by example and to live as close to the people as possible, mirroring Christ's own humility and love for the marginalized. The red shoes, a legacy of martyrdom and suffering. Another layer to the significance of the red shoes is their connection to martyrdom. The red color of the shoes is seen as a symbol of the blood of Christian martyrs who have died for their faith throughout history. Just as the Pope is seen as a shepherd who leads and guides the flock, he is also expected to be ready to face suffering, hardship, and sacrifice for the sake of the Church. The red shoes are not only a mark of papal authority but also a reminder that the Pope's mission is not without peril or sacrifice. The legacy of Christian martyrdom cannot be overstated in the Catholic tradition. From the early days of the Church, when saints and martyrs were often killed for their refusal to renounce their faith, to the modern-day persecution of Christians, the red shoes symbolize the willingness to stand firm in faith, no matter the cost. The Pope, as the leader of the worldwide Catholic Church, must carry the weight of this tradition in his every action and decision. A symbol of leadership, not luxury. While some might view the red shoes as a symbol of papal luxury, their true significance lies in their ability to represent the papal role of leadership. The Pope's shoes communicate that his authority is not for personal glory, but to serve the greater mission of the Church. This mission calls for leadership that is grounded in service, sacrifice, and a commitment to the spiritual welfare of all Catholics. Interestingly, the red shoes are worn by the Pope at his most public moments, when he is seen by millions worldwide, including the historic moment when he first steps out onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. At these times, the red shoes serve as a powerful visual reminder that the Pope's leadership is both an honor and a heavy responsibility, one that he must carry with humility, faith, and dedication. The red shoes, an evolving tradition. While Pope Francis may have set the trend of foregoing the red shoes, the practice of wearing them remains an enduring tradition in the Church. Even popes who have chosen to wear simpler footwear have done so with the understanding that the red shoes are a symbolic reminder of the weight of papal authority and the historical connection to the Church's past. In an era when symbols of wealth and power are often scrutinized, the red shoes take on a deeper meaning. They remind the world that the papacy is not about grandeur or luxury but about carrying the spiritual and pastoral mission of Christ. Whether worn with pride or forego in favor of simplicity, the red shoes continue to serve as an essential symbol of papal responsibility, leadership, and sacrifice. a sacred tradition that lives on. The red shoes worn by the newly elected pope are a powerful emblem of papal authority, humility, and the tradition of martyrdom. Whether they are worn with the intention of honoring tradition or worn as a reminder of the pope's role as a servant leader, these shoes remain an indelible part of papal history. For Catholics worldwide, the red shoes are a sign not just of the man who leads the church, but of the legacy of Christ's love and sacrifice that the pope is called to emulate every day. In a world that is increasingly focused on materialism and luxury, the red shoes serve as a poignant reminder that the papacy is a vocation of service and sacrifice, not of personal indulgence. Each time a pope wears them, whether out of tradition, humility, or personal choice, they echo a message of unwavering commitment to the mission of Christ and the faithful who follow him. The Chair of Peter, the throne of papal authority. The Chair of Peter, known also as the Cathedra Petri, is one of the most profound and sacred symbols of the papacy, representing the authority and teaching power of the Pope as the spiritual leader of the Catholic Church. This iconic chair, which holds a central place in St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, is not merely a physical object but a deeply symbolic item that ties the Pope to the Church's origins and to the sacred authority passed down through the apostolic succession. A seat with ancient significance. The Chair of Peter is not just a comfortable seat but a profound representation of the Pope's sacred office. It is said to be the very chair that St. Peter himself used during his time in Rome, although the actual physical chair now displayed in the Basilica is a relic that dates back to the 4th century. The Chair of Peter stands as a symbol of continuity, marking the unbroken line of papal authority from St. Peter, who was appointed by Jesus Christ to lead his church, to the current Pope. This chair, positioned in the apse of St. Peter's Basilica, is intricately designed and gilded in gold, emphasizing its sacredness and historical importance. The Cathedra Petri is so integral to the papacy that the word cathedral itself comes from the Latin word cathedra, meaning chair. The cathedral is the seat of the bishop's authority, and thus, this chair signifies the central role of the Pope as the Bishop of Rome and the universal leader of the Catholic Church. The symbolism of the chair, the authority of the Pope. The Chair of Peter is one of the most powerful symbols of papal authority. When a newly elected pope receives this sacred chair, it is not merely for the comfort of sitting but as a physical manifestation of his sacred role and responsibility to shepherd the flock of Christ. The chair represents the teaching authority of the pope, his role in protecting the faith, and his duty to lead the worldwide Catholic community in accordance with the teachings of Christ and the Church's traditions. As the chair is often associated with the Pope's papal throne, it carries a profound theological weight. It symbolizes the transmission of the apostolic authority from St. Peter to the Pope. It is through this sacred line that the papacy maintains its unique position as the earthly representative of Christ on earth, with the authority to teach, sanctify, and govern the Church. In the solemn moments before a newly elected pope steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, the Chair of Peter holds deep symbolic meaning. It is a reminder that the Pope is not assuming a position of personal power but is inheriting the sacred office of spiritual leadership, guided by the Holy Spirit and accountable to the Church. The chair's ritual use. Before the new Pope steps onto the balcony to address the crowds gathered in St. Peter's Square, he will take possession of the Chair of Peter. This is done in a ceremonial act that signifies his acceptance of the full sacred duties of the papacy. This moment marks the official beginning of his papacy and is accompanied by prayers and blessings. The Chair of Peter is often referred to as the Pope's throne, and its use emphasizes the Pope's divine appointment to the service of Christ's Church. In many ways, this act of sitting in the Chair of Peter signifies more than the assumption of a leadership position. It is an act of humble acceptance of the responsibility that comes with guiding the Catholic faithful. The Pope's role is not to reign as a worldly monarch, but to serve in Christ's name, as Christ himself demonstrated through his humble service. The Chair of Peter is a powerful and enduring reminder of the Church's mission. That the papacy exists not to elevate the person who holds the office but to elevate the message of Christ and the teachings of his Church. In this way, the Chair of Peter serves as a constant beacon of truth and steadfast leadership, ensuring the Church remains true to the original teachings passed down by the apostles. A legacy of leadership. The Chair of Peter has stood at the heart of St. Peter's Basilica for centuries, and its presence is a testament to the unbroken history of the papacy. It is a constant reminder to the Pope, and to the world, that the papacy is not just an office or a title, but a sacred vocation, rooted in the apostolic ministry entrusted to St. Peter by Jesus Christ himself. The chair's legacy continues with each new pope, as he takes his place in this long line of leaders, whose duty it is to preserve the faith and guide the Church according to Christ's example. As the new pope takes his seat in the chair of Peter, he is reminded that he is not simply stepping into a position of authority, but into a sacred mission that spans millennia. The moment is profound. It represents the weight of history, the unity of the Church, and the indelible link between the papacy and the mission given to St. Peter by Christ. For the Pope, it is a call to leadership, to witness to the gospel, and to shepherd the people of God with humility, wisdom, and compassion. A symbol of spiritual and ecclesiastical authority. In summary, the chair of Peter is not merely a physical object, but a sacred symbol that carries with it the spiritual authority of the papacy. It represents the apostolic succession, the teaching authority, and the sacrificial leadership of the Pope, whose duty is to serve Christ and his Church. As every new pope steps forward to take possession of the chair of Peter, he accepts the sacred mission entrusted to him, one that is centuries old and will continue for generations to come. The chair of Peter, a symbol of authority and humility. The chair of Peter is more than just a throne, it is a living symbol of the papal office and the spiritual authority entrusted to the Pope as the Vicar of Christ on earth. This sacred item marks the Pope's official assumption of his responsibilities and reminds both the Pope and the Catholic faithful of the profound trust placed in him by God and the Church. The chair of Peter's place in St. Peter's Basilica is significant not only in a spiritual and theological sense but also in terms of its historical importance. The chair itself, which is displayed in the apse of the Basilica, represents a tangible connection to the apostles, particularly St. Peter, who is considered the first pope. In this way, the chair serves as a visual and symbolic anchor to the apostolic succession, affirming the continuity of papal authority from St. Peter to the current pope. Ritual significance of the chair. The chair of Peter is part of the papal enthronement ceremony, a deeply ritualized event when a newly elected pope takes possession of the seat of Peter. During this event, the pope symbolically sits in the chair, affirming his role as the spiritual leader of the Catholic Church. This act is not merely ceremonial but is laden with profound theological significance. By taking his seat in the chair of Peter, the new pope acknowledges his responsibility as the shepherd of Christ's flock. The chair of Peter is a direct link between the pope and the apostolic authority passed down through centuries, reminding the new pontiff of the weight of his mission. It symbolizes his acceptance of Christ's mandate to feed my sheep, John 21 verse 17, a mandate that he will carry out by teaching, sanctifying, and governing the Church. The chair's historical evolution. While the chair of Peter in St. Peter's Basilica is the most famous, the idea of the papal chair itself has evolved over time. Early papal chairs were much simpler, but over the centuries, they became more elaborate as the papacy grew in prominence and influence. The current chair in St. Peter's Basilica was designed by John Lorenzo Bernini and installed in the 17th century. It is an ornate, gilded chair surrounded by magnificent artwork and sculptures that depict the spiritual weight of the papacy. The Cathedra Petri, as it is called, is not simply the seat of a ruler, but rather a throne of service. It is not a throne in the traditional sense of royalty, which implies power over others. Rather, it signifies the papal role of servant leader, a title modeled after Christ, who came not to be served, but to serve, Mark 10 verse 45. The Pope, upon sitting in the chair of Peter, commits to humility and self-sacrifice, following the example set by Jesus Christ. The chair's role in papal liturgies. Throughout the year, the chair of Peter holds significance during major papal celebrations, especially those related to the Feast of the Chair of St. Peter, celebrated on February 22. On this day, the Church remembers the papacy's foundational role in the history of Christianity, honoring St. Peter's authority as the first pope and acknowledging the sacred continuity of papal leadership. The chair of Peter is also central to the masses celebrated by the Pope, especially during the Easter Vigil and the Feast of St. Peter and St. Paul, where the Pope might be seen sitting in the chair during liturgical functions. While it may be a symbol of authority, it is equally a symbol of service, as the Pope stands to serve the Church and its members in Christ's name. The chair of Peter as a unity symbol. Beyond its significance for the Pope personally, the chair of Peter also functions as a symbol of unity for the entire Church. It is the physical and spiritual symbol of the Pope's role as the source of unity for the worldwide Catholic community. The chair of Peter embodies the idea that the Pope serves as the guarantor of the Church's unity, helping to maintain its fidelity to doctrine and guiding the faithful in matters of faith and morality. This unifying role is evident in the way the Pope's authority, symbolized by the chair of Peter, is recognized by Catholics worldwide. It is through this authority that the Catholic Church is preserved as a unified body of believers, with the Pope ensuring that the Church remains faithful to the teachings handed down through the apostles. The chair of Peter, in this sense, is not just a symbol of the Pope's authority but of the spiritual cohesion of the entire Church. The eternal seat of apostolic succession. The chair of Peter is far more than just a piece of furniture. It is an enduring symbol of the Pope's sacred authority and his connection to the apostolic succession that began with St. Peter. Through this chair, the Pope assumes not just a role of leadership, but a divine mission to shepherd Christ's flock with wisdom, compassion, and faithfulness. As the new Pope takes his seat in the chair of Peter, he not only inherits the responsibilities of leadership but also reaffirms the timeless mission of the papacy, to serve the people of God, to protect the faith, and to ensure the Church remains united in its pursuit of holiness and truth. This chair, in its simplicity and grandeur, is a reminder that the papacy is both a humble service and a sacred calling, anchored firmly in the tradition of St. Peter and the early Church. Number 8. The holy water, a sign of purification and blessing. Among the sacred items presented to the newly elected Pope before he steps onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, holy water holds a particularly profound significance. This item is more than just a simple ritualistic act, it is a tangible expression of the Pope's spiritual role in the purification and sanctification of the Church, as well as a reminder of the power of baptism and renewal through water. The significance of holy water in papal rituals. In the Catholic Church, holy water is used as a sacramental, a blessed object that serves to sanctify, protect, and remind the faithful of their baptism. It is considered a means of grace and a sign of spiritual purification, marking a physical and spiritual cleansing as individuals prepare to engage in sacred activities. For the newly elected Pope, the holy water given to him at this pivotal moment symbolizes not only his own purification but also his commitment to sanctify the Church as a whole. Before he addresses the crowd from the balcony, the holy water is a reminder that, just as Christ's baptism in the Jordan River purified him, so too must the Pope's leadership be rooted in purity and holiness. The ritual of the holy water at papal inauguration. When a new Pope is elected, the holy water is used in a simple but profound ritual before he steps onto the balcony. The Pope may receive a small sprinkling of water or a blessing with it, reaffirming his role as the spiritual leader of the faithful. This act may seem simple, but it carries deep theological weight, as it underscores the essential nature of baptism and the importance of spiritual cleanliness. In this sacred moment, the holy water also serves as a personal moment of reflection for the new Pope. It reminds him that, as Christ washed the feet of his disciples to demonstrate his role as servant leader, he too must lead with humility and purity. Holy water is therefore both an individual and collective purification that signals the Pope's readiness to lead the Church in the spirit of Christ. The holy water and baptismal connection. The connection between holy water and baptism is key to understanding its importance in this moment. The Pope, as the Vicar of Christ, carries the responsibility not only of governing the Church but also of ensuring that the faithful remain faithful to the sacrament of baptism. Baptism is the gateway to Christian life and, through the use of holy water, the new Pope is reminded of his role in maintaining the sanctity of the sacraments and guiding the faithful toward a life of holiness. This connection to baptism also reflects the Pope's role in the apostolic mission. Just as baptism cleanses and unites believers to Christ, so too does the Pope work to purify the Church and unify the faithful under the banner of Christ's love and truth. It's a powerful reminder that, in his leadership, he is not merely a ruler but a spiritual guide leading others to the eternal life offered through the sacraments. A symbol of protection and blessing. Holy water is also known for its role as a protective and blessing tool within the Catholic tradition. As the newly elected Pope prepares to step onto the balcony, it's a gesture that connects him to centuries of papal tradition, where the use of holy water has been a means of invoking God's protection over the Pope's ministry and the faithful he is about to lead. In this sense, the holy water is not just about personal purification, it is a prayer for divine guidance and safety, a plea for protection from the forces of evil and temptation. The sprinkling of water becomes an outward sign of the Pope's dependence on God's grace as he embarks on his papal journey. It symbolizes the hope that the Holy Spirit will guide and protect him as he fulfills the divine mission entrusted to him. The role of holy water in papal unity. Holy water, though a personal sacrament, also has a communal role. It signifies the Pope's connection to the worldwide Catholic community, reinforcing the notion of unity. As the Pope prepares to lead the universal Church, the holy water is a sign that the faithful are united through the sacraments, particularly baptism. It reflects the Pope's role as a unifying force, not just within the walls of the Vatican but across the global Church, linking the faithful through shared rituals and the profound grace that holy water represents. Purification, blessing, and renewal. The holy water presented to the newly elected Pope before he steps onto the balcony is more than a ritualistic accessory. It is a deeply symbolic item, representing purification, blessing, and renewal. It connects the Pope to his spiritual mission, rooted in baptism and the sanctification of the Church, while also serving as a protection and invocation of divine guidance. In a moment of great importance, when the Pope takes his place as the spiritual leader of the Catholic Church, the use of holy water underscores the sacred responsibility he assumes. For both the Pope and the faithful, it is a reminder that true leadership in the Church is not based on worldly power or authority, but on the grace of God, the sanctifying power of the sacraments, and the call to serve others with humility, faith, and devotion. Number 9. The Apostolic Blessing, a solemn gesture of divine favor. As the final sacred item presented to the newly elected Pope before stepping onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, the Apostolic Blessing carries profound spiritual significance. This blessing is a moment of connection between the Pope, the faithful, and the divine. It is a symbolic act, uniting the Pope with the apostolic tradition and signifying his spiritual authority and the grace bestowed upon him to guide the Church. The Apostolic Blessing, the symbol of spiritual authority. The Apostolic Blessing is more than just a ceremonial act, it is a solemn invocation of God's favor upon the newly elected Pope. It marks the Pope's role as the Vicar of Christ, tasked with guiding the Catholic Church and protecting its doctrine, teachings, and people. This blessing, bestowed upon the Pope at this pivotal moment, signifies the divine approval and empowerment necessary for him to lead with wisdom, compassion, and unwavering faith. Historically, the Apostolic Blessing has been a key part of the papal tradition, given not only at the moment of the Pope's election but also during pivotal moments in his papacy. It emphasizes the Pope's apostolic mission, entrusted to him by Christ to shepherd the Church and proclaim the gospel to the ends of the earth. This moment of blessing signals that the Pope is spiritually equipped and ready to fulfill his divine vocation. The power of the Apostolic Blessing. When the newly elected Pope receives the Apostolic Blessing, it is not only a blessing for himself but also for the entire Catholic Church. As Vicar of Christ, the Pope is the earthly representative of Christ's ministry, and through the blessing, he receives the divine authority to continue that sacred work. The Apostolic Blessing is intended to strengthen the Pope, not only in his personal mission but in his responsibility to the millions of faithful Catholics across the world. In this moment, the blessing is a spiritual shield and a call to holiness. It serves as a reminder that the Pope is not acting alone in his leadership but is instead empowered by the Holy Spirit to lead with compassion, justice, and mercy. This divine favor signifies that the Pope's every decision is made with the intention of advancing God's will for the Church, under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. The Apostolic Blessing and the Global Church. The Apostolic Blessing is not just a personal moment for the newly elected Pope, it is a blessing for the entire Church. As the Pope steps onto the balcony, he extends this blessing to the faithful gathered in St. Peter's Square and beyond. The blessing signifies the Pope's role as a spiritual father to Catholics worldwide, uniting the faithful with the universal mission of the Church. Through this blessing, the Pope asks God's divine protection over the Church, invoking peace, healing, and strength for all believers. This blessing is a recognition of the Pope's role in leading the body of Christ, the Church, and a reminder that, as the successor of Peter, he is charged with guiding the faithful and ensuring that the gospel message continues to be preached to every corner of the earth. A connection to the apostles and the early Church. The Apostolic Blessing also highlights the Pope's deep connection to the apostolic tradition. As successor of St. Peter, the Pope inherits the mission given by Christ to Peter and the apostles, to shepherd the flock and strengthen the Church in truth and charity. The blessing, which has been given to popes for centuries, connects the new pope directly to the long line of apostolic succession, reminding him that he is the latest in a line of leaders entrusted with the sacred task of preserving and passing on the teachings of Jesus Christ. In this sense, the apostolic blessing serves as a moment of continuity in the Church's history. It is an outward sign that the mission of the apostles is alive and continues in the papacy. As the Pope prepares to begin his mission, he is reminded of his responsibility to the early Church and his commitment to serving as Christ's representative on earth. The spiritual responsibility of the apostolic blessing. The apostolic blessing is also a reminder of the spiritual responsibility the new Pope takes on. It is not merely a ceremonial gesture, but an acknowledgement of the immense weight of his office. Through the blessing, the Pope is entrusted with divine grace to carry out the mission of leading the Church. The blessing affirms his calling to serve not for personal gain or glory but to fulfill the will of God for the Church and the world. As the Pope offers this blessing, it is not simply a gesture of goodwill but a spiritual act that sets the tone for his entire papacy. It's a moment that underscores his role as a servant leader, one who must always place the needs of the faithful above his own, guided by prayer, humility, and devotion to Christ. The apostolic blessing, a call to lead in faith and service. The apostolic blessing given to the newly elected pope before stepping onto the balcony is one of the most sacred and meaningful acts in the papal tradition. It is a spiritual seal that affirms the pope's divine authority and calls him to lead the Catholic Church with wisdom, compassion, and grace. This moment is a profound reminder that the Pope's leadership is not based on worldly power but on the divine calling to serve the Church and the world in the name of Christ. As the newly elected Pope extends the apostolic blessing to the crowd, it is not only a blessing for the faithful but also a moment that connects the global Church to the apostolic tradition, reminding everyone that the Pope is the steward of Christ's mission, carrying forward the legacy of the apostles and ensuring the faith is passed down faithfully to future generations. As the sacred items are donned, a series of ceremonial steps follows. The moment of public revelation is marked by the senior cardinal deacon's announcement, "Habemus Papam, we have a pope." This phrase, spoken from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, signals the new pope's first appearance to the faithful. The new pope steps out, raised in the papal vestments and surrounded by the sacred symbols of his office. In these sacred items, we find more than just ceremonial regalia. They are profound symbols of service, humility, and sacrifice. The white cassock, the fisherman's ring, the pallium, the red shoes, all of these serve as constant reminders of the Pope's mission to guide the Church with Christ-like love, humility, and devotion. When the new Pope steps onto the balcony, clothed in these sacred items, he is not merely assuming a title, he is embracing a divine calling to lead the Church with grace, compassion, and unwavering faith. The items he receives reflect his commitment to following Christ's example, to lead with humility, to suffer for others, and to serve without seeking personal gain. As we witness this sacred moment unfold, we are reminded that the papacy is not a position of power but a call to serve, to suffer, and to lead others toward Christ. Each of these sacred items carries with it a deep and enduring message for the Pope and the faithful. The weight of history, tradition, and faith is embodied in these symbols, which remind the Pope that his leadership is a service to God and to the world. As we witness the election of a new Pope, let us reflect on the immense responsibility he takes on and pray for his guidance and wisdom as he leads the Church through an ever-changing world. Thanks for tuning into Sacred Pulse Times, where faith meets clarity in times of change. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, stay informed, stay prayerful, and stay connected to the pulse of the body of Christ.